بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So in the book Greater Sins, we left off going over some narrations about what the greater sins were. We talked about and we finished the lengthy narration where someone came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and he started reading the ayat about Allah will, if you stay away from the greater sins, then he stopped and then he asked the Imam to enumerate those sins. So he listed them and the ayat that basically showed that they were a greater sin. And we talked about some ways to prove that there are greater sins. One of them was if Allah promised punishment to those people in hellfire, then that would be considered a greater sin. Then we got down to other narrations about greater sins. We mentioned the second one and the third one. There's just listing some of the common greater sins. We left off at the fourth one, from Uyun al-Akbar al-Rida, which is written by Sheikh Saduq. This book is I know it's in Arabic, it's also in English. I don't know what other languages it is in. So there's a narration in here from Imam Rida alayhi salam. It shows that he wrote a letter to Ma'mun, and he prohibited certain sinful acts as they were greater sins. So he sent them this letter, and from this letter we can deduce greater sins. We'll just read through them because throughout this book, it will take one by one and delve into it in more depth. So in the letter, he lists these sins. We'll read them. To kill those whose murder is prohibited by Allah. Adultery, stealing, drinking wine, disobeying the parents, fleeing from the battlefield, taking the property of the orphans, eating dead animals that are not slaughtered in the Islamic way, blood, and pigs without compulsion. Meaning here, an animal that's not killed, the biha, it's not killed in the proper way, or a dead animal. Let's say someone finds a dead cow or a deer or something like this, an animal that's normally permissible, but the animal died on its own. This is also not permitted. Blood and pigs without compulsion. So if we were compelled to do this by force or necessity, like we were in the middle of the desert, and if we did not eat this meat, then we would die and there was nothing else left for us to eat, then that is compulsion, and Allah values our life more than committing this act. So we will be excused from this act. We see it's not compulsion for someone to go to the restaurant and say, oh, there's nothing on here I like except these, steak that's here, but steak is not halal. I don't like salad and I can't sustain myself on salad, so I'm going to order the steak. This is not compulsion. Compulsion is when we have nothing at all, no other option, no rice, no beans, no nothing, and we cannot wait. Like we know that we will not reach any other food in an amount of time where we would lose our life. This is compulsion. Next, accepting usury when it is obvious, consuming prohibited wealth. For example, taking money from orphans, drug money, money from theft, and other things. Gambling, cheating in business by underweighing to accuse chaste women of adultery, homosexuality, to despair of the mercy of Allah, not fearing the divine punishment, not acknowledging the bounties of Allah, cooperating with the oppressors, to associate with the oppressors. What we mean by cooperating with the oppressors, we mean promoting their agenda, helping them oppress other people. Because we do see in the history of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam that there were some companions that, like Ali ibn Yaqtin, the Imam permitted him to work in the, the palace of the oppressor, but his position there was he was in taqiyya and he was helping Shias. For example, they said, okay, they're going to go raid the this house of Shias. Make sure you tell them not to go there, or to, you know, not to hold your program, and these type of things. They were able to help and make a difference. So this is different. What we mean here is cooperating with them, helping them in their oppression. Taking a false oath to obstruct the rights of someone without any valid reason or compulsion. Lying, pride, arrogance, squandering wealth, expenditure in ways not permitted by Allah, to betray the trust, to consider Hajj of the Holy Kaaba unimportant. We have to give importance to things. A lot of times we say, if you have the money and you have the means, just say, I don't really care to go to Hajj. I don't care about this. I go, I don't go, whatever. But if we do have the means to go, then we should go. It's wajib on us once in our lifetime if we meet those criteria. Also, we see, similar things like ziyarat. We see sometimes a person may never go to ziyarah, never even think of going, never try to go see their imam, yet they'll go all over the place, Barbados, or, one of these islands, or they'll go, England, and, all these other places that are good vacation spots. Iraq is not a nice vacation place, but it's very good for ziyarat, and it's plagued with war for decades. So it's not up to luxury standards or anything. But when you see the haram of Imam Hussein alayhi salam or Imam Ali alayhi salam, you forget everything else. And it's good to strengthen our connection with our imam by visiting them and doing ziyarat. After that, whenever you hear musibah or tragedies of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam, you can picture yourself in that place. You can picture the place where Imam Ali was struck in Masjid al-Kufa. You can picture the place where Imam Hussein alayhi salam was slaughtered, because you've seen this before. But sometimes people's priorities, they don't put them in order, and they don't go to ziyarat. They rather go all these other places. So, if it wasn't for Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam, we wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't even know about Islam. Islam would be so much changed that, we owe even knowing the name of Islam to the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions. So the least we can do is at least go take some money and go visit them. It's not that much, maybe $900, $1,000, but it's not a lot of money even one can save for that. So this greater sin is not about ziyarat, but it's about Hajj, to consider Hajj of the Holy Kaaba unimportant. To fight the friends of Allah, to enjoy vain preoccupations, meaning like you get these things in the way of your ibadah, for example. Like there's nothing wrong with playing soccer or football or whatever, or watching TV or these type of things. These things are halal. But when you let these things interfere with the greater goal of your life, then it becomes a problem. Like if you play sports so long that you miss the whole prayer, Salatul Dhuhr, Asr, it's gone. You start playing soccer at 11 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock before Dhuhr, and then you play all the way to Maghrib and you don't care. Don't stop for Salat, don't do anything. This is a problem. We have to make the time and stop what we're doing when the time for Salat comes, and make salat. At least we need to make it in the time frame that Allah has set for us to make it. The sooner, the better. We should try our best to make it in the earlier time, inshallah. The next greater sin is to persist in sins, because at this point, if someone is just continually doing this thing on purpose, they don't care what Allah, if Allah sees them or punishes them or what, they're just saying, I'm just going to keep doing this thing over and over. We have to find a way to break out of that cycle and get away from that sin, because it has become habitual. It's something we made as a habit. We have to break out of that. And some things, may require extra help. And that's why we have a good support system, inshallah, within our communities to help one another instead of shunning them. A lot of times we see someone makes a mistake, we slam the door in their face and say, oh, you have disbelieved, you have done this, you have done that, don't even come around. They don't want to be around you. They act like you have become najis or impure or something like that. We have to help these people who have problems. We have to find a way to help them, not publicly humiliate them or turn them away. We cannot agree with what they're doing either, but we need to find a way to help them. Some people, maybe they're addicted, so they keep doing the sin over and over. They have an addiction. For example, they're addicted to alcohol, so they continuously drink, or either drugs. Some drugs are addicted, even physically addictive, that if they stop doing them, their body will shut down and they'll die from that. So they need medical help to get off of that. We need to support them and help them get the help they need. Maybe some need counseling. We need to get counseling for them so they don't persist in that sin. And he says, inshallah, all these traditions will be explained at the appropriate places. Like I said, this whole book, we are going into introduction now about what are these sins, what are we going to be talking about, what is a greater sin and what is not, why are there greater sins and other sins, so that when we get further in the book, maybe by the next class, we'll be on the first greater sin, which is shirk, or to associate others with Allah. The next section, he says, some people raise this question or objection about greater sins. He said, why didn't the Quran explain all these greater sins in detail, like number them and say these are the greater sins? And why do we have a hadith from the Ma'sumin alayhi salam with greater sins that are different than each other? Some list 30, some maybe say 7, some maybe say 10, or for example, like this. Why do we have this? He said, we even have a narration from Ibn Abbas that says the number of greater sins are 707. So they say, why are all these differences? So the author, he says, it's by the lutf, or the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he has not mentioned the greater sins, the total number of them in the Holy Quran. He said there's some hidden wisdom in this. He said, let's say that he named all of those and there was a fixed number of them. Let's say 50, for example, and they were listed in the Holy Quran. Then people would only refrain from these 50, because Allah says in the ayah to refrain from the greater sins, and he will forgive you or overlook the minor ones. So if we have 50 here, we say, okay, khalas, that's it. We're only going to stay away from 50. Whatever else is free game. It can go, because Allah will forgive us for those as long as we stay away from these 50 that he mentioned, for example. So they wouldn't have, taken care of the other ones. They would only focus on those. It would have made them feel empowered to commit other sins, because he says the other sins will be overlooked and they're not in that specific category that Allah has mentioned. So Allah prohibited us, to even avoid the lesser sins. And if one becomes unmindful of the lesser sins, then he will slowly start to go towards big sins. We see that Imam Qadhim alayhi salam was mentioned in the book Tuhaf al-Uqul. He said to one of his companions, he said, Ya Hisham, Isa ibn Maryam, or Jesus alayhi salam, he said to his disciples, the small and the little sins are among the trickeries of Shaitan. He makes them seem insignificant for you and makes them small in your eyes. So these sins start piling up. They get multiplied and multiplied, and then they become a lot of them, and then they encompass you and they surround you. So we have to be careful of the little sins that we think are something minor. Like we say the white lie, they call it the white lie. Oh, it's a small lie, it doesn't matter. You tell enough of these, you're in big lies now. Things that we think are minor, maybe are just thinking of them as minor is not good either, because we shouldn't look at the size of the sin. We should look at who we are sinning against. We should look that we are, there are some narrations that state that, if we find ourselves in two positions, basically, we know that we can say that Allah is not watching us, so we can do whatever we want. If you say that, then you are a disbeliever. We should say Allah cannot see you. So if you have went into kufr, disbelief. The other way in regards to sin is to say, yes, Allah watches us, Allah sees us, which is true, but we do it anyway. Who cares? Then we say that we are saying that basically that Allah is an insignificant viewer. Like it doesn't matter if Allah sees me or not, I'm going to do it anyway. So both of these are bad. So we have to try to be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as we can. And the more we are mindful of Allah, the more it will restrain us from committing more sins. It's easy to say, well, it's hard to put into practice, and it takes continuous work on ourselves with jihad and nafs, or the struggle against oneself, which is the greatest jihad, more so than physical battle. So we said someone may be able to fight with their hands or to shoot a gun or something like this, but can they lift that? Can they lift that blanket off of them in the morning for Fajr and get up and make their salat? This takes work. It's easy to say, oh, I'll make the morning prayer, but it takes practice to get used to getting up at that time, and to tell myself this is important. I have to get up out of the bed and make salat. I can't just say, oh, who cares? I'll do qada later. No, we have to work on ourselves continuously for that. He says to persist in lesser sins is equivalent to committing greater sins. He said it's an established fact that if one repeatedly commits a lesser sin, he will eventually become liable for greater punishment. Inshallah, we will explain these details because there's a chapter in this book called Persistence in Lesser Sins. He says, by not mentioning the specific number of the greater sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed a favor on the people. Had a number been fixed, they would have inclined to regard those sins that weren't mentioned, they would just cast those aside, and they would be inclined towards those sins because they would look at them as lightly. They would look at this sins, not a big deal, because it's not in the category of the major ones, so we can do them. They would underestimate the seriousness of that sin. Such indulgence over a period of time makes an individual bold enough to perform other types of misdeeds. It is for this reason that Allah has commanded his creatures to stay away from these type of misdeeds, to avoid all these types of sins. Being unmindful of minor sins will gradually attract them to greater sins. He said, it's indeed Allah's grace that by encouraging us to abstain from all types of sins, he keeps us safe from the most dreadful ones. Because we stay away from all of them, Um, there's a category of sins. We have greater sins and minor sins, but they're in a bigger category of sins. If we stay away from the bigger category, then everything within it we are safe from. We are staying away from the major ones, and also whatever may be considered a minor sin. He said no sin is to be considered insignificant and trivial. He who commits a minor sin is deprived of thawab. We're losing rewards or benefits by partaking in an act of disobedience to Allah. If we would have abstained from that thing, we would have gotten benefit from abstaining from it. He says, also every sinful act has some evil repercussion or the other. So it happens that one who repeatedly commits minor sins slowly becomes susceptible to greater sins. When we continuously sin, one's shame of committing the sin is removed. And then they start becoming numb to sin, and then their heart begins to darken. We read the narration before that our heart is like a white, is covered with whiteness, for example. And when you commit sin, you get a black spot on your heart, or what Quran calls as rust. And then the rust will encompass the heart. The more we sin, the more this spot spreads until it encompasses the whole heart. When we do istighfar or seek forgiveness of Allah, it wipes away these dark marks on our heart. We see that, for example, someone steals something. They take some candy from the store. As a kid, they steal candy one time. They feel so much shame at stealing candy, and then, oh, am I going to get caught? Or I feel bad, I took something. Next time they do it, it lessens. Then next thing you know, they don't care about stealing. They steal every time they go to the store. They don't care. Even if they get caught, they'll run away or whatever. And then they start stealing bigger things from candy. Now they are breaking in houses. They're breaking in cars. Next thing you know, they are robbing people with guns, and it leads to bigger things. Same thing if someone has shot one person, for example, they feel a lot of remorse, but then they do it again and again and again. Then they become like a cold-blooded killer. It doesn't even faze them to see dead people or killing someone. Like a soldier, the soldiers, they are numb to this. They shoot someone, it doesn't even bother them. Maybe before, the first person they shot, they would see them in their dreams, or they have nightmares about this type of thing, and it bothers them for a long time. But as time goes on, they become numb to killing. So we see that these type of acts, they maybe start out, you're having some shame and accountability and thoughts about them, but over time become numb to those. So the same thing with lesser sins. We keep doing them, we will eventually move to greater sins. Says, on the other hand, one who refrains from such acts becomes the recipient of Allah's blessings. This is definition of sabr. Sabr is patience, but sabr is also in the category of patient against sin. You are refraining from sin, and you get reward for being patient against sin. Patience is not just when calamities come down on you. Patience is also when the sin comes to you and you refrain from it. Say, I don't want to partake in that. For example, a young man, like we see with Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, when the woman came to him and he refrained. He says, I do not want to do this. When someone does that, this is sabr. They are patient against the sin. They are abstaining from that sin. So he says, thus the one who persists in minor sins will be doubly unfortunate. He will derive the thawab that is reserved for avoiding these sins. He will not derive. So he will not get the thawab in refraining from the sin. When we refrain from the sin, we're getting thawab because we are following Allah's command, and we are not following path of shaitan. So we'll get reward for this. And he said, secondly, So this person who persists in, they do these sins, they will be deprived of that thawab of rejecting it at that time. And also they will be disqualified from Allah's forgiveness for those sins at that time, because they are persisting in those sins. He said, this idea has been presented in the following tradition. May Allah forgive the sin of the sinners. These people have surely been deprived of thawab of good deeds. So we see in this narration that those people who are partaking in sin at that moment, they are losing the thawab they could have got. We get the it's like a presentation comes to us. Okay, this sin is put before us. We have two ways to go. We can follow Allah's command, abstain from that sin, don't partake in it, we will get reward. Or we can partake in that sin. Now we have acquired a sin, and also we missed out on that benefit of abstaining, the thawab that we could have gotten. So we have lost the thawab, and now we have a sin also. So we are, he says, double, misfortunate in this case. We have lost something that was good, and we have gained something that was bad. He says, it may be mentioned here that another subject also dealt with briefly in the Quran, but elaborated by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the A'imma alayhi salam, concerns the absolute authority of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam as the representatives of Allah on the earth, to teach and demonstrate to mankind the laws of Allah about right and wrong. Allah himself says in Quran, Surah 16, ayat 44, and we have revealed to you the reminder, that you may make clear to men what has been revealed to them, and that happily they may reflect. We have revealed to you the reminder, the dhikr. Then Allah makes it obligatory for people to refer to Ahlul Bayt when he says in Quran, in Surah 16, ayat 43, the ayat before, so ask the followers of the reminder, the Ahlul Dhikr, the people of reminder, if you don't know. So Allah is telling people to go to the people of the reminder, which is Ahlul Bayt. Because we have numerous traditions that say that Ahlul Dhikr mentioned in the Quran are Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. One from Imam Rida alayhi salam, when he was in the court of Ma'mun, he says, we are Ahlul Dhikr. Sunni scholars, they present at the meeting, objected to this statement. So there were some Sunni scholars there in the court of Ma'mun. They objected to the statement, and they said that Ahlul Dhikr in Quran means the Christians and the Jews, the people of remembrance. And dhikr refers to Injil and Torah. So the Sunnis present with Imam Rida in that court said, no, Ahlul Dhikr is Jews and Christians, and dhikr itself is Injil and Torah. Imam Rida alayhi salam, he said, Subhanallah, glory be to Allah. How is that possible? How could Allah command the Muslims to refer to the Christians and the Jewish scholars? If we refer to them, they will consider their religion to be the true one and better than Islam, and will invite us to their point of view. Will you accept this invitation? So we see here that Imam Rida alayhi salam says, how could Allah command us when we need to find out something to go to Christians and Jews? Ma'mun, he said, can you support your claim with Quran, with Quranic proof? So Imam, he says, yes, dhikr means Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And we are Ahlul Dhikr, his people, the people of Dhikr, the people of Rasulullah, Ahlul Bayt, the people of the household of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And he says, to prove, Imam Rida alayhi salam says, to prove my point, I quote the following ayat. O you who believe, Allah has indeed revealed to you a reminder, a dhikr, an apostle who recites to you the clear communications of Allah. This is Surah 65, ayats 10 and 11. So we see here that Imam Rida alayhi salam tells them, there's an ayat that says, we've revealed to you a reminder an apostle. The reminder is the apostle who recites the clear communications of Allah. So this ayat proves that dhikr is Rasulullah. And when it's in the other ayat, it says, refer to Ahlul Dhikr, Ahlul Rasulullah, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So it's very clear. Shahrastani, a Sunni scholar, he reported that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Imam Ali alayhi salam both said, we are the people of remembrance, Ahlul Dhikr. Another argument, the author he brings said, another argument is that since Allah has mentioned only in brief many of the important subjects in the Quran, he must have appointed a point of reference for the guidance of the people, which would provide a detailed explanation of the subject. For example, the Quran has a lot of generalities, general statements. The specifics need to be described by the messenger and the household of the messenger. For example, Allah says, establish salat. Okay. How many rakats do we make? What do we do if we doubt in salat? What do we do? What are all the positions? All of these things, they need to be explained by Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Allah commands us to pay zakat, but how much, on what things, all of this has to be explained by Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, so Allah must have appointed a reference point for this, and this reference point is undoubtedly the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in whom Allah has reposed his knowledge and his secrets, not known to any of his other creatures. Those who desire the knowledge and truth will forever be dependent on Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and remain attached to them with love and devotion. And this devotion for the Ahlul Bayt is in itself a blessing, which fetches Allah's rewards and his mercy. I truly believe that all society's problems that we have, they can be solved by following the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Most of the problems we have today, and they come from turning away from their guidance, turning away from guidance of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If the people would have held on to the walayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we would not have a lot of these problems that we have today. And we see that most of the problems are plaguing the Islamic world are coming from turning away from the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One great scholar, he would always say that, it's sad to see that Muslims are fleeing away from the Islamic, Islamic countries, going to the Western countries to get help, when, it should be the other way around. If we follow the teachings of Holy Prophet and set in place the teachings that they gave us for how to run society and all of these things, our societies in the Muslim countries would be so great that everyone would be trying to run towards us. They would be coming from the West trying to get to us. But they have lost their status and position in the world, and people are looking at Islamic countries as way behind the times, or not as advanced, because they abandoned a lot of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So in order to get the status and the prestige that they once had, they need to return back to the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And to do that, we have to take time and study what are what are the true teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If we learn these true teachings, we may not see them in practice, but we will know them. We will know how the community of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Maybe we come to a different community and we see that it's not like that, and it's not the opposite of, it's something different maybe, but we will say, this is not how it's supposed to be. I know what a true community should be like because I've read and studied about it, and this community that I've encountered is not doing some things, and then you will know how to fix it, or you will know how to advise how to get to that teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, because you know them. If you don't know them, when you see the community in a messed up position or state, you may think this is Islam, this is the way they teach, this is the way it's supposed to be, and it's not right. So therefore, Islam is not right. Islam is backwards, or Islam is teaching, these things. So it's and some people, they do that. They say, "Oh, look at the West. The West is so far advanced, and they don't have Islam. We have Islam, and we are in a bad situation." I've encountered this with youth in Iraq. It doesn't have anything to do with the Islam. It's the culture of the people. The culture of the people. They have made their own different practices and abandoned practices of Ahlul Bayt. So this way, they are behind. If they were to follow the practices of Ahlul Bayt and implement these things, then they would be advanced. So it's not the fault of Islam, it's the fault on the people. The religion is perfect, but people are not. The general community of Muslimin, they are not perfect. So we have to look, instead of looking at people, we have to look at the teachings itself, the actual words of Allah, the words of Holy Prophet, the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. With this, we have run out of the time, and we'll pick back up next week, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
I have a quick question.
Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Yes.
The reference that you gave about Imam Rida answering Ma'mun.
Yes.
What surah and what ayah? Was there 65 you said?
About Ahlul Dhikr?
Yeah, Ahlul Dhikr. Sorry, yeah.
Let me tell you here. 16.
16.
Ayat number 43 through 44.
43,
and then
44.
he mentioned his proof. That was the first ayats. Then Ma'mun asked him to give his proof, and it was his proof where Allah calls the Prophet dhikr is Surah 65, ayat 10 through 11.
65 is the talaq, right?
Yes, talaq, yeah.
I didn't see anything on 10. It says, Allah has prepared for them a severe punishment, so be wary of Allah, O you who possess intellect and have faith. Allah has already sent down to you a reminder as an apostle.
There you
so
go.
That probably is, okay.
Yeah, Quran, let me see, I'll put the ayat here. 65. Let me look here. I pulled it up on my phone. Yeah, the last part. Qad anzalallahu alaykum dhikra. Allah has sent down to you a reminder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The next ayat, Rasulam ya'lu alaykum ayat Allah mubayyanat ليخرج الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات من الظلمات إلى النور. A messenger. So he said, I've sent down on you a reminder. Then the next word, a messenger who recites to you the verses of Allah that are clear to bring those who believe and do good deeds out from the darkness into the light. So Imam Rida alayhi salam is saying, this is the dhikr, the Rasul. And Allah tells you, refer to Ahlul Dhikr. Who is Ahlul Dhikr? The people of the Rasul. So this is us, the Ahlul Bayt.
Yeah, I've read this so many times. They're never connected that way. That makes sense.
Yeah, they're separated, but when you look at them together in this context, it becomes clearer.
Yeah, definitely.
Imam Rida, this book, Uyunu Akbar al-Rida alayhi salam, by Sheikh Saduq, it has a lot of the debates that Imam Rida alayhi salam would have. Ma'mun would always bring these people, the heads of the Christians, the heads of the Jews, the atheists, the other religions, and bring them and try to ask questions to make Imam Rida, try to stump him and try to humiliate him.
So it was not an interfaith discussion. It was more like a gotcha.
It was supposed to be an interfaith type of thing, but really it was to try to put him down in a way. Like if we bring someone who, we think this person knows more than the other person, so we try to make the one who we think knows less make a mistake, and the other one can tower over him and show that this one is more prestigious and he knows and the other one doesn't really know. See, we'd always
Yeah.
try to throw a curveball, I guess,
Yeah.
at Imam, but Imam would always, prevail in these things.
But to think that the Sunni scholars would demean a Muslim philosophy by making the Jewish and the Christian
Yeah.
philosophy higher is just amazing to me.
Well,
I mean,
a lot of people, and especially in that time, had a lot of envy towards Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and they didn't want people to go towards them, and they wanted to, they would change or give whatever meaning they wanted to in order to take the meaning away from them.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Well, 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. I'll be back in
Inshallah.
5 minutes, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.